You're listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place. All right. Welcome back to Arcane Carolinas. I am Charlie Mushaw, your co-host with a very fast internet connection. Woo!
And I am Michael G. Williams, multi-award winning novelist, and also your co-host.
You also have a very fast internet connection.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite pleased with myself right now about this. Pleased as punch.
This is the first episode we're recording in 2022, isn't it?
It is, yes. And I have moved finally. Yeah. Well, for the second time in 2 months, but I've landed at the permanent spot. Please do not send things to the old return address.
Yeah, whoever bought y'all's house doesn't want it.
Nope. However, we do have a P.O. box set up.
Yes. Hey, Michael here, jumping in to say, if you want to send us something via the postal service, email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com to get our updated address, because the thing that I'm about to say might happened, and my P.O. box is going to have changed 3 times in the course of like 6 weeks by the time you listen to this. So if you want to send us something, that's awesome. Email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. And for your patience and understanding.
So there you go. If you want to send us something, please feel free and send it to that P.O. box. We would love to hear from you.
So a brief aside about the P.O. box, because I find this hilarious. It is possible that I will have to re-record that.
Okay.
Because I got a voicemail yesterday from somebody at the post office saying, we need to talk to you about your P.O. box. Huh. And I suspect that it's because the people who used to have my P.O. box were IBM.
Oh,
and I've gotten a bunch of mail for IBM and just like had to stick it back in the mailbox and be like, I don't live here anymore.
I have a P.O. box and I have taken the stuff back to the counter and been like, this is not for them. And it still just gets stuck back in the P.O. box.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, there was some real wild stuff about getting the P.O. box set up in the first place. And I suspect that what has happened is that, you know, International Business Machines is like, we would like our P.O. box back from this dude who's like written some books.
So, yeah, maybe that'll get edited. Maybe that won't. But I feel like this whole conversation should remain.
Yeah, I'm in.
Cool. How are you this morning?
I scheduled this specifically for the time when the coffee starts to kick in. So I'm doing great.
Cool. I've been up since 4:30.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's like lunchtime for me, despite it not being lunchtime.
I have not been up since 4:30.
It wasn't by choice. So anyway, today, welcome back to Arcane Carolinas. We've been away for a minute. We are back. Today's story is a modern weird, and it comes out of Florence County, South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Florence County was founded in 1888 from the pieces of a bunch of other counties, but actually wasn't fully formed until 1921.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. So it's pretty new as far as, municipalities go.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1921. Can you imagine if they just like lopped off part of the county that you live in? And we're like, we're making a new one like today. It's just such a foreign concept to me to see that it wasn't fully formed until 1921 was a bit of a surprise.
You know, that happened a lot. If you go look at historical maps, then
sure,
the county lines get redrawn and drawn again over and over again.
Yeah, I know we've talked about that from a historical perspective. I just feel like all of it happened before 1900.
Yeah, it's just pretty wild.
Yeah, I'm going to declare myself my own county. I don't think that would go over too well.
No.
So large cities include Florence and Johnsonville in Florence County, South Carolina. I-95 and I-20 run through it. But today's story specifically comes from the unincorporated community of Mars Bluff.
Mars Bluff,
which is home to Francis Marion University, named after the American Revolution hero, Francis Marion. You might be saying, well, who's that? You might remember the moniker that the British gave him from history class. He was the Swamp Fox.
Oh.
Yeah, that dude.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a university named after him there. It's also home to a place called Michael D's Barbecue Pit. If you look it up on Google Maps, it just says D's Barbecue, like D apostrophe Z barbecue. And we'll throw a link in the show notes, but destinationbarbecue.com did a profile on them, and man, does it look good.
Oh.
Like, it looks exceptionally good. Apparently, it's a big destination for people traveling to the beach.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
The town of Mars Bluff also holds the rare honor of being a town that was bombarded by the United States Air Force.
Was this on purpose?
So this is today's story.
Okay. Were they just like, screw that town? Or,
Or, not quite.
Okay.
So in 1958, the Air Force was conducting what was called Operation Snow Flurry, in which Boeing B-47 Stratojet bombers, you'd recognize them if you saw a picture,
Okay.
would fly out of Hunter Air Force Base in Savannah, Georgia, up to England, perform mock bomb drops from which they could collect data, and then proceed to a strategic air command location in Africa. So it was like this big arc, like picture that geographically. It was, it was the Cold War, and they were testing like, okay, well, if we need to do this long of a loop, what's it going to look like? And since this involved a lot of time in the air and maintaining a readiness posture in the event of war with the USSR was a big thing. Like, they had this policy that like bombers in the air had to have nuclear armaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the bombers doing practice runs were also carrying nuclear bombs.
Live ones, real ones.
Yes.
Just in case.
Just in case it popped off and they needed to divert from their flight path to reciprocate.
Wow. Everything old is new again. This feels very relevant all of a sudden.
Yeah. Very, put it well. What's old is new again. So on March 11th, 1958, 4:38 p.m., U.S. Air Force B-47 Stratojet with nuclear payload left Georgia, headed for England. And while the plane was moving through the Georgia sky, crossing over into South Carolina, the pilot, Captain Earl Kohler, observed a fault light in the cockpit, indicating the bomb harness locking pin was not engaged.
Those are words you do not want to put together in a sentence.
No. So he directed the navigator, who was also the bombardier, Air Force Captain Bruce Kulka, to go check it out. So the pilot, they're both captains, but the guy flying the plane did like ding, 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 light goes off, and he's like, hey, you need to go look at that. The other dude is like, all right, hops out of his seat, runs to the back. And while this is happening, two young sisters, 6-year-old Helen and 9-year-old Frances Gregg, along with their 9-year-old cousin Ellie Davies, were playing about 200 yards from a playhouse in the woods in Mars Bluff, South Carolina. This tiny structure was near their home. It had been built for them by their father, Walter Gregg, a veteran who was a paratrooper in World War II.
Okay. So he understood. I would imagine afterwards, assuming he made it through this, I'm assuming that he was like, oh, I know exactly what these people are talking about.
Back up in the air, Kulka doesn't actually know where the locking pin is located, by all accounts.
Somebody did not read the manual.
Right. One of the accounts that I read said that the pressure that was put on these crews to get in the air and maintain this readiness posture involved a lot of hammering things into places they weren't supposed to go, and like a lot of duct tape and well wishes.
Oh, yeah.
Just to meet the standards of like, we have to get in the air now. Well, apparently Kulka was also of small stature. He's a little guy. He had to physically jump to get to where he could take a clear look at how things were connected. And when he did that, he had to grab onto something. It's very dark comedy.
This is so Dr. Strangelove. I love it.
Yes, exactly. So he jumps up and grabs what he thinks is something that he can hold on to pull himself up. And it is the emergency bomb release mechanism.
Oh my gosh. I feel like it's worth noting that I can only laugh because I'm assuming that Mars Bluff still exists.
The thing is, this mechanism exists so they can dump it on the ground, right? If something else fails and they're in the air, they can do it. So there's a reason for this lever to be there. It's not to pull yourself up.
Yeah.
So he grabs it and yanks on it, and it engages and the bomb drops from its shackles.
Oh.
Now, the thing is, the doors, you got to open the doors before you drop the bomb, whatever. They hadn't opened the doors. So it kind of like slammed into them for a second, but it weighed 7,600 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
One account, and there's a lot of different versions of this story, some of which have what we describe as embroidery. Yeah. One of them has him on top of the bomb. Very Dr. Strangelove. Like, oh no! And scrambling to get off of it. What we do know happened is that the weight of the bomb pushed the doors open and the bomb began falling. Kulka was not attached to the bomb. He was not riding it. Yes.
That's good.
So he managed to grab onto something and like hold on and pull himself back up into the jet. I imagine he needed to change his pants after that.
Yes.
So the bomb was falling from a height of 20,000 feet and landed almost exactly on the Gregg daughters' playhouse. Now, remember, I said they were playing near it. They were playing about 200 yards from it.
Sure.
By all accounts. And fortunately for everyone involved, the nuclear component of the bomb was not armed. There was apparently a core that I'm not a nuclear scientist. I have no idea how they actually work. I know that there's conventional explosives and a nuclear component.
Yeah.
The nuclear component was stored separately on the plane. So like if they knew they were going to have to use it, they had to, take the whatever, put it in the bomb, arm it, close it back up. And then they're like, all right, we're good to go. That does not mean that the conventional explosives were still not armed on the bomb,
right?
Which was the case.
Yeah.
And so it hit near the playhouse, just gone. Apparently the crater, and I'll post pictures of the crater when this episode goes live. Apparently the crater was 75 feet wide and between 25 and 35 feet deep.
Good grief.
The little girls were injured, but they're okay. They're not permanently injured. Nobody was killed. Yeah. I wouldn't be making light of this.
No. Yeah. My assumption is that we can only laugh because nobody was really killed, messed up by this.
Yeah. Or permanently injured. So miraculously, pretty much everyone in the Gregg family is injured. Their house from the shockwave is destroyed.
Oh, gosh.
Or unlivable. Trees were leveled. Buildings in the surrounding area reported damage, like broken windows and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously miraculous. No one was permanently injured. And we'll post a link in the show notes to the firsthand account from the little girls, all grown up, of their memories of it. And the general thing was that there was like, yeah, we don't really even remember it happening. We just remember walking home and everybody freaking out as we had like blood coming out of our ears and whatnot.
Yeah, if there were enough conventional explosives to like a crater that large, the shockwave coming off of that would have been very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That alone probably would have burst eardrums of just people who were within too close of hearing range. If you ever watch Mythbusters, for instance, every time they blow something up, they have great big protective shielding in front of them, and they're all wearing ear protection. And they're often wearing safety goggles and like everything. I mean, and these are like small explosions compared to this. They're tiny explosions.
Yeah, take a somber tone. One of the problems overseas with IEDs that United States soldiers dealt with wasn't always necessarily like the shrapnel or whatever. It would be the shockwave causing internal injuries.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is, again, absolutely miraculous that nobody died or had permanent injuries from this. Despite Mr. Gregg being a veteran, he rightfully sued.
Yeah. No, I think this is definitely a time when you should lawyer up.
Yeah. My house is busted. Who's going to fix that?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to fix this. I sued the Air Force and wound up getting $54,000.
Which at the time, that's big money.
There's with inflation and everything, it was probably like $500,000 or close to it based on what I could find online. Mr. Gregg, one of the daughters said in an account that I read that he regretted accepting that amount, that he felt, after a couple of years, he was like, man, it should have been more. But he was a relatively good sport about the whole incident. I think he felt very fortunate that he hadn't, lost his family or his life.
Right. That is the thing to focus on here.
The quote that I really liked is in a newspaper article. They were like, well, what do you think? And he was like, well, I always wanted a swimming pool. I guess now I don't have to pay to get one dug.
I Love this guy.
Family went on a game show, the I Have a Secret game show, or something along those lines. I vaguely recall seeing this on like Nick at Night forever ago, where contestants would try to pull out and guess what somebody's secret was, and nobody could guess that, you know, a nuclear bomb got dropped on their kid's playhouse. Fragments of the bomb are on display at the Florence County Museum. You can also visit the crater. There's a little bulletin board display with newspaper articles and a wooden cutout of a cartoon bomb.
I love that you can visit the crater.
It's on Google Maps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is on private property. It's in a little neighborhood. They don't mind people coming to look. Apparently, it's a regular thing. Just be respectful and don't be sneaking around in the middle of the night trying to find the hole in the ground.
Sure.
And it's not that big anymore through basically just soil movement. It's filling back in, and there's a hurricane comes through. It's in the woods and knocks a bunch of limbs off trees. They're not cleaning the crater out. It's not a tourist attraction. It's just a thing you can see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the story of the time that the United States Air Force bombed Mars Bluff, South Carolina.
Wow. All I knew was that this was an episode about an accident involving a bomb. And my assumption was that this was about the bombs that were accidentally dropped in North Carolina that there was recently some coverage about, because like WRAL in Raleigh did a story about them or something like that. Or I saw that like come up in the news recently.
This story gets recycled a lot. There's a lot of sources out there on it. It's just interesting because it is part of this, like you mentioned, this legacy of misplaced bombs.
Yeah. Which really does kind of speak to that thing you were saying of the emphasis was on, we've got to be ready at all times and we need it now, so you kids, and when I say kids, I mean like a lot of times these were kids.
Right.
Kids, get up there in the air and do whatever you got to do.
Give a bunch of 23-year-olds nuclear bombs and tell them to stay in the sky for 12 hours.
Yeah, right. I feel like if OSHA had been involved, maybe there would have been a bigger sign on the emergency bomb release lever.
There would at least have been maybe one of those little crappy first aid kits where everything's expired because it's been there for 10 years that he could have grabbed onto to pull himself up instead of the lever. I need to go on a tangent about those. So I worked at one point in this old warehouse. It was a fun job. It was a great job. I like the people that I worked with. And they had the best headache medicine in that little box, the little OSHA box on the wall with all the stuff.
Yeah.
Like gauze and Band-Aids and stuff. And it was called Pain Aid.
Pain Aid.
It was amazing. It was a blend of ibuprofen, acetaminophen, and caffeine.
Oh, yeah. Like Excedrin.
Yeah. And I loved it. It was great. So if you had a headache, go over to the box, take one of those. Anyway, that's all. I like those little boxes.
I'm going to add that to the morning pill routine.
Oh, there you go. Get some Pain Aid. So that's it. That's the Mars Bluff story. I know it was a quick one, but it's good to get back into the swing of things.
That was great.
Fun little modern weird. Modern weirds are usually kind of quick because it's like, well, this definitely happened. We didn't have to do any research.
Yeah. So you were talking about the way that the bomb worked and not knowing. This is a very high level description. And there is probably an actual expert who is actually informed, who will listen to this and be like, he got it wrong. And if that is the case, then please email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com to explain how I got it wrong so that I can correct myself later. Because I would really genuinely appreciate that. But generally speaking, when they are armed, quote unquote, then there's a larger amount of nuclear material, a gap, a catalytic material, and then conventional explosives. And when it hits, the conventional explosives go off and jam the two reactive materials together to initiate the nuclear reaction that is the nuclear bomb.
That's slick. Yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm talking about horrific weaponry. Like, it's pretty slick. That's smart.
Yeah, but basically you have to have conventional explosives to shove the two reactive materials together with enough speed and force to start the chain reaction.
That makes sense. That was very good. I can visualize that perfectly.
Yeah.
Our next one will probably be back to something spooky.
I don't even know what we're talking about next, but we have a lot of things to talk about.
Do you want to talk about your course this semester that you're really enjoying?
Right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that we need to be clear is that Michael is engaging in postgraduate research and classwork.
I'm doing a program at Appalachian State. It's the Appalachian Studies certificate program. It's a post-baccalaureate certificate. It's like a third of a master's degree, to be clear.
Hey,
but
whatever. You are a folklorist. Do not take that away from yourself.
I am not taking that away from myself. This semester, I'm doing a class called Appalachian Sociological Contexts. It's basically sociology of Appalachia. A lot of it is sort of, there is this notion in popular culture of Appalachian culture as sort of a distinct list of cultural features and beliefs and practices that is applied universally to the region that we call Appalachia. There are multiple definitions of what that region is. A lot of them are like very formal, down to this county is an Appalachia and that county is not. And those definitions have been created over time for different reasons. Some of them political, some of them economic, some of them, whatever. But that notion of there being a single unified, quote, Appalachian culture is something that's pretty artificial and was created by people from outside of that region to sort of describe it for others. And so talking about how does that concept not apply? How does that concept apply? Why did people come up with that idea? What are the features of that concept of Appalachian culture, and do some of them apply in some places but not in others, whereas others do apply in some other place? It's a really fascinating class so far. I'm really into this class, and we're reading a really fascinating book at the moment called Appalachia in the Making: The Mountain South in the 19th Century. It's about the cultural forces that led to the ways in which Appalachia is in some ways and was historically in some ways isolated, and in a lot of ways not. And it's really fascinating. I'm going to steal a quote from this class for the title of a novel that I'm writing, because the founder of Berea College in Kentucky in the 19th century, if I remember correctly, described Appalachia at the time as our contemporary ancestors. And I think that that's such a fascinating term.
That's great.
The novel that I've been working on that I have been struggling to find the title for is now going to be titled Contemporary Ancestors.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I brought it up because I thought our listeners might enjoy hearing about that and how that is going to pepper some extra flavor on some of the stories going forward. The more you get into the program, I feel like the more we're going to have additional insights beyond what we would have prior. And I think that brings a lot of value to the show. It's
a really fascinating program. And let me tell you, there are programs like it at other schools in North and South Carolina. And if that sort of thing sounds interesting to you, check out whether you can, if you don't feel like you have time to enroll as a formal student in a program, find out if you can audit a class online or something like that for a few bucks and just get access to the material, or just find out what books they read and find them, in a library. There's some really fascinating stuff out there to learn about the place that we live.
And bombs got dropped there.
Oh gosh.
I'm in my head, it's like Looney Tunes. Like Wile E. Coyote goes flying off into the distance. I understand that it's not that funny.
It's the event itself was clearly pretty traumatic, but it's so funny to imagine the look on that dude's face when the bomb fell through the doors.
What I could not find is what the plane did. I imagine it circled back. I imagine they radioed and circled back. I couldn't find the flight path for what it did after it dropped the bomb. But I do know that within 45 minutes, the town was swarmed with National Guard and other military personnel that were mobilized to go check on people and secure the area and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Gosh.
I'd love to get a recording of that radio call.
Kolka
did a thing. Don't tell him it was me. Well, it was you. I'm not taking it. I just told you to look at it. I didn't tell you to drop the bomb.
In my head, they're just let's just keep flying and not mention it. And when we get to England, we'll act real surprised.
Where did it go? It was right there. I don't know what happened. We've been robbed.
Somewhere in this, there's a joke about airlines have always been losing luggage.
That's all, folks.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Next time, I won't joke about horrible things that happen to people.
Yes, you will.
Yes, I will.
You've been been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards.
Which, if you look it up on Google blah, 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 blah. If you look it up on Google Maps,